publicity surrounding the introduction of the NYS buses on various city routes, and other Matatu operators will actually have legitimate concerns. All right, so like I mentioned, this is our top story this morning. We are also asking you on Twitter if you think that the PSV operators have legitimate concerns over the introduction of NYS buses on the city routes. I'll be looking at your responses. I've seen quite a number of them coming through. Keep them coming. KTN News Center is the hashtag, or tweet me at Betty M. Kialo. Do you think that the concerns that have been voiced by the Matatu operators are indeed legitimate? Talk to us and let me know your thoughts on this one. For now, though, I want to introduce my guests here in studio. We have two guests. One joining me from our City Center studio, that's Simon Kimutai, the chair of the Matatu Owners Association. He's going to be, of course, a part of the discussions from our City Center studio. But here in studio with me is the Association of Matatu Operators in Nairobi Central Business District Chairman Jamal Ibrahim. Thank you very much for your time and thank you for coming on News Center. So, of course, there are quite a number of concerns that you've already raised, about this introduction of NYS buses. Maybe you could just take us through, the reasons why you feel like it's not a level playing field.
Okay, thank you, Betty. This issue of NYS buses, we are not denying for them to be on the transport issue, on the transport business. Right away, as we are speaking, many countries from different continents wameshajaribu hizi issues za transport na wengi wao wakashindwa. Na sisi hatuwezi bishana na president. Right away as we are speaking, president alishasema NYS buses zifanye kazi.
Right.
And we are so happy about the competition. It's so healthy. But we need level ground yetu na yao ikuwe same. Because one thing ukiangalia issue, Betty, on reality basis, there is issue about insurance. There is issue about TLB and RSLs, the NTSA. There is inspection. There is a lot of issues that wanafaa comply as NYS ndio tukue same level na wow. La sio hivyo, at least president, because we are his voters, wangeangalia upande zote waseme, okay, you guys, TLB zenyu tunapunguza, insurance zenyu tunapunguza, na VAT tax yenye tunakata, tax compliance tunakata, na juzi hata imeongezwa bei, wangezipunguza. Right away as we are speaking, tukisema fare imepandishwa bei. Fare imepandishwa bei simply because unaangalia route mali unaenda, barabara ni mbaya. Kama kutoka Kasarani, kutoka Imenti House paka Kasarani, the road is bad, one. Secondly, fuel yetu ni 104. So ukitoka kwa fuel ukuja barabara mbaya, insurance iko juu. So we have a lot of
shida ni yani, these NYS buses, of course they have an upper hand because they're not paying maybe for some of the things that Matatu operators mnalipia.
Betty, mi kitu moja ningesema, I wish president could have consulted. President consult executive wing, but aja consult the stakeholders wenye matatu. Wale tuwe kwa barabara hakuna shida. But shida ni playground yetu sio level. Leo hii pia wananchi wanasema tunafurahia NYS buses zikikuja. Yeah, because wanalipa pesa mingi, wanalipa fare. Mali wanafaa kulipa fare 40 bob, watalipa 70 shillings, yes. Of which is painful. But on our sides, sisi wenyewe tunaumia because we are poor millionaires. Basi moja inanuliwa na 5 million. Tax ya VAT ukikata 16%, that is almost 700,000, 800,000. Yes. NYS buses, tukiongea ukweli, wamepatiwa bure. They don't have any pinch. Hawana insurance, hawawezi shikwa na askari mahali popote. So they are tax free. Pia sisi tungewekwa same na wao. Tuambue kwa windscreen na kuna kitu imebandikwa. I think fare yetu hata ingekuwa 20 shillings from Nairobi to Githurai, ingekuwa 10 shillings to Nairobi to Githurai.
All right. Let me get the sentiments of Simon Kimutai joining me from our City Center studio. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Kimutai. So talk to us about the main concerns, you as the Matatu Owners Association have with regard to this introduction of NYS buses. Are they the same as what Jamal is talking about? All right, Mr. Kimutai, if you can hear me, I just want to get your reaction and your, of course, your feelings about this introduction of NYS buses. Jamal has just mentioned a number of issues that you know they have, but what do you have specifically as Matatu Owners Association? All right, so we'll get the sentiments of Mr. Kimutai shortly. So coming to you, Jamal, so of course you have all these issues, and like you mentioned earlier, it's very hard to fight with government. So for you, what is it moving forward? Ni nini ambayo unataka wafanye ili you feel like, okay, fine, this is the level playing ground? Being very realistic, because I'm sure you guys cannot buy mafuta na 43 bob.
Okay, to be realistic, and as I said earlier on, we cannot fight with the president. With the government, actually. But at least public service vehicles, matatu, wangetupunguzia fare, wangetupunguzia mafuta, na sisi tupunguze fare. Lakini day in, day out, loans are there. I think president may try all his best, but unaona saa ukienda GM, bei ya chases, ya body, ya kununua body, it's expensive. Magari zetu saa hii, even if ukafanya saa hii research, KCP, body 33-seater, Matatu KCP in Nairobi, I can count for them. There are only 6. Kwa nini? And last year Batuan tulikuwa tunatoa within the period of KCB, hizo magari zote, tunatoa karibu 30 to 40 vehicles. Sasa hii tunatoa gari 5, 4, because of life. Economy imeenda juu sana. So, si tukilipisha fare 70 shillings mahali tunafaa kulipisha 40 bob, it's because of insurance ilipandishwa the other day. Mafuta imepandishwa. Everything yani mahali tumeka.
But sometimes also, Jamal, mafuta sometimes that inaweza pungua, lakini bado you know, the fare remains the same.
Right away as you are speaking, Githurai hata sasa tunaweza ongea sasa in the morning from town to Githurai wanalipisha 10 shillings. Sisi watu wa South B pia wanalipishanga 10 shillings from South B asubuhi to from town to South B. So sometimes unaangalia tunapunguzanga, unajua venye nyinyi amkujangi on the ground muone yenyewe watu wanapunguza. So NYS coming in as the competitor, hatuwezi kataa. But tupatiwe fair ground. Fair ground yetu ni usitupunguzie fair hata nini kuje 43 shillings. Tupatie favorable conditions. At least na sisi tusiumize wananchi, because furaha yetu si kuumiza wananchi. We are these people. Right away, Betty Kialo, as we are speaking. Ukienda kwa yards, mabanko wamechota magari zetu. Kama mimi nilikuwa na deni ya 70 million, nimebakisha 28 million. Hiyo deni unakuja unapata magari zinachotwa usiku na mchana, simply because umeshindwa kurecover your loans. So ukiuliza makanga anakuambia saa fare tumeshapunguza bei, hii imepungua, ingekuwa imepungua hivyo zote ingekuwa ni rahisi. Lakini sasa life iko juu.
All right. Yeah. Let me get, I understand that Mr. Kimutai can now hear us. So thank you for joining us. So what concerns do you have specifically to do with the introduction of these NYS buses?
Well, I don't know. I don't know whether there's some mischief we are reading or anything, because it's a disruption of business. You know, in business doing, we apply a bit of mathematics. We do cost accounting to be able to derive to a cost of traveling that is fair. And what has been proposed by NYS is not sustainable. And I look at it and I do not understand what it's come to do. And we see very well that they have not complied with National Transport and Safety Authority regulations. I don't know how they were licensed. I do not understand, because there's an application of routes to be done, and before even doing business, you have to pay advance tax and so forth. We ain't much against any competitor coming in, but can the government do it? They've tried it before, and they have failed. You know, this is a business. We employ over 100,000 youths in Nairobi alone. Now, when such disruptions come in, we definitely, very many youths are going to lose their jobs. And the problem was not supply of service. There is an oversupply. The business is completely saturated. So I really don't know whether somebody did his work nicely by probably carrying out a study. And at times we say when fares are hiked, there is a reason. It's not madness, because this is business. You must have returns to your investments. And we look at it, you know, when it rains, for instance, there's an argument that fares do go up. Sure, the journey time becomes more. If, for instance, where you're supposed to travel for 30 minutes and you're in a vehicle for 3 hours, what happens? We must share the burden of, of the costs involved.
Right.
So I believe this can be sorted out, and I believe this can be, we're just trying to bring in our concerns about the move.
All right. Mr. Kumitawu, the other thing is that, that when you talk to Kenyans on the streets, they're welcoming this NYS buses, simply because they're saying that, the fares are a bit too high. Coming from Nyayo Stadium to the CBD, sometimes 100 shillings is what you pay for such a short distance. So they're saying, you know what, maybe this could be, that silver bullet that we've been waiting for, at least for us not to pay, the hiked fares that, they normally pay.
Now, let me say one thing. I mean, everybody, even me, if I was to have a cheaper ride, I would do that and I would praise it. And, but there must be proper costing. We can't do charity work. We are there to do business and make profit. And of course, definitely I understand, even if I was a passenger myself, and there was a bus that charges me 20, another one charges me 50, definitely, it's just common sense. I would have a ride in the one which is less expensive. But when we do this, we are doing costing. We have a problem in Nairobi that people do not understand this business. And there is a lot of, name calling and, blame. I know there's a problem of discipline. There are problems that needs to be addressed. We've made recommendations to the government because we employ these boys who actually we out and we don't license them. The government gives them all the documents and we employ them. So I think we need to put things in its perspective by probably providing a training for them to be able to behave properly. So I believe in terms of costing, NYS have gotten these buses. They cannot be able to sustain the same if it was meant to maintain the vehicle on the road. One tire of that bus is very expensive. It will take probably 2 weeks to buy one tire. So what business is that? What we're just trying to put across is that please don't ruin a business that we provided for very many years, and we facilitate the movement. We are facilitating economic activities. So it's the government to see and weigh and say it's in bad taste that NYS is coming in to disrupt this business that has been done by private sector for a very long time.
Here in studio, Mr. Kimutai, one of the other things that, apart from the fares, really, one of the things that the PSV, industry has been struggling with is, like you mentioned, discipline. You have, sexual crimes in these vehicles. You have, pickpockets in these vehicles. Kenyans are saying that, they would feel much safer in the NYS buses. So do you feel like to some extent, with this window that you've had before the NYS buses have come, that maybe to some extent, Kenyans were let down with regards to, this commuting, in different city routes?
You see, criminal activities are criminal activities. It can happen in NYS vehicles. And I'm sure a pickpocket would have a ride in NYS vehicles. We are not operating a rogue or a criminal business. We are doing business just like any other business. What happens is you might not be able to identify a pickpocket. You cannot be able to identify any other person with ill intentions. But what we're saying is that we must separate the two. This is an industry where public transport investors have put in billions. And they've got to look to see returns to their investments. About behavior is that we've made recommendations so many times. I've even put a recommendation that the functions of TLB issuance or the PSV license issuance to be removed from there to an area where people will have a training first and then they can be employed in Matatu sector. Like for instance, NYS have very good training facilities that would probably add value and change the behavior of these crews that we do have. We understand, also they misbehave. I mean, they cut me on the cross, on the roads, and I feel bad. But what do we do? Do we just condemn an industry, or we look at an area where we can be able to improve it? And I believe the only way to improve is by giving information and education. And then I think they'll be able to move from that kind of behavior to a better way of behaving.
Mel, what are your thoughts on this one? Do you feel like to some extent, the reasons why Kenyans are saying, they want this NYS buses is because for a long time the PSV sector, the Matatus, the Matatu industry really has let them down in terms of service for such a long time?
What I can add up on that issue of NYS, these buses, si ati hazitakuwa na issues. They have a lot of issues. One windscreen ya NYS hiyo kubwa, it's around 50,000. So hata ikigongwa tu na mawe moja ama ikigongwa na kitu yote, it's damn expensive to repair those things. Yetu in terms of kupatiana service kwa wananchi, we have really tried our level best kuleta sanity on the road. I think when you check 5 years ago and right away, mali tuko, we are at least.
Is it really improving?
It's really improving. It's really improving.
Over the last couple of months, we hear of sexual harassment. Bado hiyo hizo pickpockets bado wako. There's still quite a number of issues. I don't think we've really improved on that.
Inaweza add up kitu Kimutai amesema. Criminal activities na hizo sexual harassment. Hatujazaliwa sisi wote kwa mtu mmoja. Sisi wote tumezaliwa in a different behaviors. So unapata ule mtu mwenye ametoka na wazimu zake anaweza fanya ujinga zake mali moja ama kwingine kwa magari zingine. Hata kitu tungeomba in department of NYS, juu tunatambua NYS. Kitu tungeomba, kuna vijana wengi ambao wako from 18, 19, 20 wenye NYS wamechukua. Tungependa vijana wetu hata makanga na madriver wapatiwe service kama hizo za NYS, na ikuwe ni kama NYS watapatiwa subcontract ya kutupatianga driver na makanga from their wing. Kama wana believe in discipline, let us just go on the wing of government law. Tuende kwa NYS watupatie vijana makanga na madriver, na wetu tuwarudishe hapo wafanyiwe hata kama ni recruitment ya 2 months ama 3 months ama 1 week. At least wapate information vizuri kwa barabara na waweze kupatia wananchi service mzuri. But what I believe is that criminal activities, si kitu unaamka asubuhi unasema tunataka kufanya criminal activities.
All right, I just want us to look at the steps that or the previous efforts that have been taken by the government to introduce public service vehicles. Let's just take a look with the help of our graphics, then we continue with the discussion. And so we'll start in 1986, you'll remember the Nyayo buses, and you have a picture of that just to jog your memory. It collapsed in 1995, and this was because of some corruption, of course, that led to this collapse. You'll remember those buses were there for quite some time, but after some time, that service collapsed because of course, the corruption issues there. And of course, you remember very well the Mishuki rules came into effect in 2004, and a number of things really were expected of PSVs, the speed governors, that both the conductor and the driver had to have uniforms, and of course, limited passengers in PSVs. Those are just some of the rules that came with the Mishuki rules. Really, to some extent, these rules brought some great change, some positive change in the industry. But as you know, after some few years, and especially after the late Mishuki left the transport ministry, some of those rules were no longer effective. And of course, now coming to where we are today, NYS buses introduced this month. And of course, the government says that this would this will, of course, alleviate commuter plight and ensure that commuters around the CBD and city routes, different city routes, actually get better services. And of course, like I mentioned earlier in the discussion we're having here in studio, is that the public service operators, the stakeholders, are having quite a number of issues with that, saying that it's not right because there really is no level playing field. Let me go back to my guest in our city center studio. Mr. Kimutai, now that you say that there are a number of issues to do with these NYS buses, they're already, they're already in operation starting from Friday up until today. It seems like it's a rolling wheel that maybe cannot be stopped right now. So what is it that you'd like to see, or what measures will you take as the Matatu Owners Association with regard to this? Are you going to seek any help from the courts, or what is going to be the next move?
Well, I think there's a move to be watched, and we're We don't know whether NYS is supposed to come over and take over the transport services in this country, transport provision. And maybe to go back a bit, we talked about discipline, and I would want you to understand an investor in his position. You know, an investor buys a vehicle, employs people who are trained by, you know, various institutions and licensed by the government. And in one other area is that rules and regulations are put in place, and there are people who are given the responsibility to enforce the same. Unfortunately, we have been let down so much because I can't wake up as an investor and keep prefecting my crew. We have traffic officers on our roads who have actually made it very difficult for us to do business because they are working in cahoots with our crews. The corruption has actually put everything on its knees. So I believe that if people were to be patriotic enough to enforce the law and make sure that there is sanity on our roads, we can have a very good transport system in this country. Now, to go back to your point is that we ain't against competition, but we don't also for government vehicles to come in and probably destroy the structures that we have put in place. Like, for instance, now they don't consider as I had talked about costing, and it would only be good, fair enough to compete on the same levels. And if NYS buses are going to traverse the city, go to any route that they want to go to, they are breaking the law. It's an illegality. So one is that if they have to come in, with due respect, what we need is to have them on the same levels as us, not to be given a preferential treatment. And the industry is so large. It has employed very many youths. And in Nairobi itself, the business is saturated. You hardly meet what you think would be able to help you meet your obligations in terms of repayment of monies borrowed from financial institutions. So I think what needs to happen is that we would want NYS to play its role normally by training people. We would want them to train our crew, not to come and compete with us, but with all fairness, if they want to come, let them come in the same levels with us. And this would not bring scare and suspicion. And if they really wanted to give a service that probably to help people, they should target a group, but not necessarily to come in and disrupt the business. They should probably say people from Kibera, probably low-income people. They, you know, like other countries like India, where there are supermarkets for the poor and so forth. But not to come and, you know, get everywhere and cause mayhem.
But, you know, is it really possible to have a level playing field? Because, you know, these buses, like you mentioned, you know, they are indeed cheaper. Just the same way we have, you know, government housing, you know, that is cheaper for the Mwananchi. So it could be, it really equated to the same thing. Like, you know, this is an option, you know, that gives, you know, cheaper services to the Kenyan. Just the same way you have, you know, free primary education, the same way you have, you know, like I mentioned, the, you know, cheaper housing for people who really cannot, you know, afford it.
But what we got to look at the end result. We've seen all these cheap things. By the end of the time, is expensive, because if a business cannot sustain itself, what is the end result? What will happen eventually? It will just collapse. It will be just like what had happened earlier on, though the buses were given freely as donations. And I think, you know, the government's work is not necessarily to do business. The government's work is to provide an environment that is conducive to do business and provide policy and good regulations that would probably make a business be worth investing in. But when you are doing business and the government comes in to compete with you at a different level, then it is destroying itself. What will happen? We will not be able to pay taxes. There wouldn't be payment of taxes. And the little taxes that are brought from other sectors are brought to maintain buses and finance, you know, that institution. So this is not sustainable. Private sector, what the government should do is to partner with private sector, provide subsidies, provide, we need to have, for instance, zero rate on fuel taxes, so that we can be able to pass this benefit to commuters. That's the only way we can do business. The government could not be doing business at the same time, collecting revenues and watching over business being done in the country. The government's work is to provide an environment that is conducive. So for me, I believe this is not sustainable. Number one. Number two is that if they are intending to increase the fleet, then I think it's just a disruption of business, which will not last. Then we'll go back to zero. You remember, earlier on, we had very good structures in public transport in this country. Kenya Bus, for instance. When I came to Nairobi in the 1980, I would come out of the house and take a bus, take a ride. At a certain time when a bus is supposed to arrive, they were scheduled. So, but we destroyed all this. Then are we going to destroy it? Everything that is there. What we need to do is to help private sector by providing good policy and assisting them to put in structures that probably could make the business be worth investing in.
Right. Thank you very much, Simon Kimutai, who is the chair of the Matatu Owners Association. Thank you very much for your thoughts and sharing with us, of course, the sentiments and the concerns that you have. Coming to a studio, let me get the final thoughts of my guest, Jima. So, now that this, these Matatus, the buses, I beg your pardon, are already in operation, and it seems that, the government is really, hell-bent on introducing more. Today, they have actually introduced 50 more buses to the 27. So, what next for the PSV industry?
Thank you, Betty. I think Mr. Kimutai has said much. What I wanted to say, the way it's supposed to be said. But I'm a man with short words. What I can see from NYS side, from my view, it's a scandal incoming. We have not even healed from the other scandal, but we are now getting another one.
Why did you say that?
I'm saying that is because, okay, hii pesa yenye inachukuliwa 2020 na 50-50 inaenda wapi? They need to tell us, because it's a public money now. Ours is a private. For them, it's public. Hizi pesa zinachukuliwa zinapelekwa wapi? Hesabu zake zitafanywa na nani? Hizi services za hizi gari zitafanywa wapi? Because as you are speaking, NYS is like another version of transport. What I can say, even we are not even supposed to call them NYS. We are supposed to call them Nairobi Youth Service, because wanafanya biashara zao zote wapi? Nairobi. It's now a business project. So what I can tell our able president, somebody somewhere is trying his level best to loot money from NYS, from his own ground.
But is it really looting? Because if you look at the consumer...
Because one thing, why am I saying that, is that unafaa kukuja kwa stakeholders, young stakeholders like us. Ukuje utuambie, there is this and this service we are supposed to provide. We are not there to object. Tutawakubali waende wafanye. Okay, na sisi tuwapatie grievances zetu. Tuambie, these are our grievances. We need to give, we are here, all of us, between NYS and the private stakeholders. Tuko hapa kupatia Nairobians good service.
Right.
And the good service is that we are being given same level playground, of which najua, as much as I'm talking, hatuwezi patiwa same. Because of, in terms of fuel na hizo vitu, hatuwezi patiwa same. But watupatie fairness, at least kidogo, ndio to feel we are Kenyans. Because one thing, ukiniambia sahi NYS walete 50 buses. Government are able to bring 50. Even they are able to bring 1,500 buses. But where will we pull our buses to? Right now, NIC, wametuma ma-emails, wanataka pesa zao. Buses zinaongezeka za NYS. At the end of the day, we are out of business. And we as the private transport, we are the economy moving. Leo hii tukiamua tuseme, if worst come to us, we pull out our buses. To say, it's okay, let the government provide for the NYS. We will take the buses to the bank. Tuambie nyi bank, fanyeni kaeni hizi magari zenyu sisi tumeshindwa kulipa. Because at the end of the day, where we are heading to ni hapo tu. Because dakika ya mwisho mimi ndachukua magari zangu, NIC, gari zenyu zimenipatia 20, shikeni. Ile pesa nimeshindwa kulipa ndio hivyo. At the end of the day, kutakuwa na watu wataenda wakisema tuna sabotage government business.
All right.
Na lakini sisi on our side, we are not ready. We believe in dialogue. Right now nafikiria wale watu wenye anaamua kuamka na kugoma, nafikiria ni wale grievances zao hazijasikizwa vizuri. But I think we have time for our able president to call stakeholders and the Minister for Transport. Na kuuliza, okay, what is the next issue about this person?
Okay.
A poor person like me, leo hii nimechukua deni kubwa sana kwa bank. When somebody sees me in the TV, nione nje wananiita chairman, but I'm suffering inside. Because at the end of the day, bank zinaitisha pesa zake. Na nisipopatiana, inaongezeka day in, day out. So mi kumaanisha sasa mali naelekea, wakileta 50 buses, najua kesho kutu wataleta 500 buses. Betty, don't expect me, wakati unanipress kwa kona kabisa, expect I'm so happy. I'm just a poor millionaire who is trying to raise from transport issue.
All right.
So I'll pull out the buses, niseme it's okay, bank, badala ya kuja kunichota, chukueni hii, mimi nimemalizwa na serikali, roho safi, mimi siko kwa biashara. Na hapo at the end of the day, atakuwa president mwenyewe atakuwa amemaliza youth. Because nimeajiri wafanyikazi wengi sana. Wataenda wapi? The level of crime itarudi juu kabisa. So it's high time for president to know that NYS is there to give good service. But NYS is a government in other wing. Do you expect NYS bus ikishikiwa industrial area ati ime contravene? You will not expect that.
All right. Sawa. Thank you very much for your sentiments, Jamal Ibrahim. He is the Association of Matatu Operators in the Nairobi Central Business District Chairman. Thank you for your time. We'll continue to focus on this story here on News Center. Remember that when we come back from the break, I will be looking at some of the feedback with regard to this issue. It's a thorny one, as you can tell from the sentiments of Jamal and Simon Kimutai. We'll continue to focus it here on News Center. For now, though, we want to take a short commercial break. Don't go away. When we